So I thought I've seen a lot of things lately online where people have, you know, posted like dad advice kind of things. So I thought I'd follow that trend as opposed to what I've been doing more recently, which is talking about awareness. I had some time here before dinner, so I thought maybe I'd try to connect for pretty much the first time in my day. Not a lot going on today for me, so try to connect with some people. Although it's looking like my thing's a little screwy here, but we can see if I can see the questions in chat. If not, I'll have to try another time. But if you got any questions that you'd want to ask a dad, I'm a dad, and I'm happy to speak to any of that. Um, and share some thoughts from someone a little bit older, because that's really what that's about, right? At the end of the day, it's about not listening necessarily to the advice of older people, but getting the advice and making your own decision with it. And, approaching many people with many different perspectives, and then choosing for yourself which one fits and is most aligned with your own unique personality. So, yeah, so I don't know if anybody has any questions, but be happy to speak to that. Let's see. Well, since there are no questions yet, although it could just be that my app is messed up, some general dad advice. General dad advice. Be true to yourself. It's number one. Be true to yourself. And that means you got to figure out who you are. You got to work that back and then own it. Because there's only one you. Always remember that. There's only one you, and you're a whole person. And that makes you special in this world. Right? It's kind of cool if you think about it, that there's only one you. So celebrate that fact. I celebrate the fact that there's only one me, and I celebrate the fact that there's only one you. So, that's the first thing. Own who you are and stay true to yourself. Now, the next thing is listen to people, and be honest with people. And what I mean by listen, to people is that, we're in this world, and people have things that and when I say listen, it means to actually hear what they're saying. Don't use your own filter, but, approach what they're saying and question it. Be curious about it. And don't just necessarily throw it away as bad just because it doesn't align with what you think, because you might learn, you'll become aware of something that changes your mind. So, and I'm unfortunately not seeing any questions here. So somebody could just post something so I can see if anybody's actually posting. And then, there's enough people here that one person probably could do that. And it could just be that my app is messed up. But I'll just keep talking, I guess, in the meantime. So we're talking about being true to ourselves. We're talking about listening and taking advice carefully from other people when they offer it. And yeah, the chat function is not working for me here. So I'll just keep talking. I'll talk for a little since it looks like a few people are interested. So approaching life, right? I don't know, the average Redditor is probably in their 20s, they say, right? Early 20s, I think 22, 23. That's early in life. Our brains are just getting developed. As I look back, I'm now 45. My brain has just developed at 45. Now, the funny thing is, I've been saying the same thing for a while now. Like at 40, I was like, finally here, my brain's developed. I can see the world, and every year I get a little bit older and I say the same thing, which says to me something about life, which is that, you just keep growing and you just keep, building on your knowledge and on your own success. And so my gut is, another 5 years here, I'll be saying, when you're 50, that's when you really get it. But the truth is, there is something to be said, that there are definitely, if you look out at different, you have your teens, you got 10, let's say 12 to 15, and then 16 to 22, And then, 22, these are like the broad spectrums of ages, right? So, and I think that's an important thing to keep in mind is that, we do grow as individuals over time. And so it looks like I got some text coming. Cool. Hey, got your text, guys. So thanks to all you guys. If you got any questions, looks like I can answer them now. So please send them over. Okay, anyway, so we're talking about ages and kind of things, I think it's just interesting to be aware of stages, right? So for, you hear about the midlife crisis, for example. Well, knowing that exists means you can look into it a little bit. So what are the stages that I've seen, like, as I've grown up? I'd say, you know, for me, high school years is one kind of thing. Then you approach college, you get out of your parents' house, you have some freedom, you get to start making some choices for yourself. And that can kind of stretch, that 18 to 22, that can stretch into your late 20s, early 30s. Some of us grow up quicker than others. There's no race to grow up. There's no race to win here, by the way. That's really important to keep in mind. This isn't, at the end of the day, you got to be happy in the moment. And that's just something that I've definitely learned over time is that if you're not being happy in the moment and you're not being able to find your happiness in the moment, then what's all the work really for? Because who says you're going to be around tomorrow, right? We assume we will because we all hope we will, but there's nothing given. So, all right. So anyway, but general age groups, but I think it's important to recognize that there's certain mindsets that you have at different ages, right? When I was in my 20s, I was much more idealistic, right? I hadn't been, hammered down. I'd see these old guys and they'd be like, nah, we can't do that. I'm like, well, you can't do that. You can do anything, right? Because I hadn't been, by the time you're old, you get hammered down and you're like, kind of beat to the ground to get to this point. They're like, so, and that's why youth is important, frankly, right? Because there's a naivete there, which is powerful, right? That it can create change when you haven't been beaten down too much because, what happens is people give up, right? If people were really cool, what they'd end up doing is they keep on fighting and fighting and fighting throughout their life. But they don't. They just kind of give up because they get tired and they haven't succeeded in their mind, which maybe they have succeeded, but they haven't seen the success that they expected to see. So anyway, but I do think it's important to consider that there are perspectives that you will grow into. We think we see the world clearly, but a lot of that is just because we're not aware of what we don't know. So as we get older and we pay attention, we get more awareness, and that enables us to, see other successes in life. So I'm going to see if we got any comments here I can talk about here. No, I got some good questions here. That's great. A dad joke. Oh, a corny joke. You know what? I'm not going to tell you a dad joke, but I'm going to tell you my favorite kid. I can't. Well, the problem is a knock joke. So I can't even do that one. But I'll see if I can figure it out. If I can come up with a good dad joke. I definitely could use a good dad joke. Is it good to have a dad bod? That's an interesting question. I don't think so. I'm a single dad, and I would say overall, the ladies, I think they prefer a dad. I think they like dads, right? Just like actually, because there's a certain like responsibility that comes with being a dad if you're a good dad at least, right? So I think there's some cred you can get for being a good dad, but I think most of the ladies would prefer the, and again, it's a personal preference, and that's an important thing, right? And I'm just kind of take these ideas that kind of come to me and things I've learned about, which is, it's always amazing to me that, especially when dealing with women, that, there's a lot of stuff that's out there, and this is going to go both ways, men or women. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, and it's all bullshit. It's all about finding that individual person that works for you. And, and there's like, 7 billion people in the world? So there's people for everybody. And never forget that. There's no shortage in this world. And that's also another important thing to remember, especially if you live in the U.S. I mean, we're in the top 1% just living in the U.S. here, right? So never forget, the luck that you have, if you are kind of in, first world countries, because we live in a state of just amazing opportunity, and we live in a place where there's everything we can need. And it's all around us for the taking, and have gratitude for that. Okay, I'm going to be a new dad in December. Any tips or advice new dads should know about? That's nice. Look, I would tell you this. Just take a moment and appreciate the opportunities. It's hard. Being a dad's hard. It's a lot of work. I got kids who are, in college and high school. And the early years, the effort of being a parent changes. And also maybe you can use this for your own parents to have some perspective here. But when the kids are young, it's a lot of physical work. We're tired. Kids aren't sleeping at night. Kids are crying. It's like, but they can't do anything. And as they get older, they become more effective at doing their own things. And then they need more emotional support and guidance. But just have fun with your kid. Spend time with your kid. That's all kids. That's all any of us want. What do any of us want? We want attention, right? So give your kids that attention. Build a relationship. I would say, treat them like an adult. Even when they're a kid, treat them like an adult. Like, respect their voice. That took me a while to understand with my kids. Is that even when kids are young, respect their voice. Listen to them. Listen to what they have to say. And don't discredit them because they're kids. So kind of, and then treat them, with a level of responsibility, and make them, live up to that responsibility. All right, let's see what else I got here. How do you deal with a friend that you always fight with, but you don't want to leave them because you've gotten so attached to them? That's a great question. So attachment, right? Obviously, right? So we're talking about attachment. Attachment creates pain. That's the old Buddhist belief of attachment. And I would just say that figure out if there's a way to create some space there, where, first of all, talk it out. That's always the first thing in any relationship. Make sure you take the moment to speak and say, like, why are we always fighting? Like, what's creating this fight between us? And try to figure it out and work with them, right? If you value that friendship, and hopefully they value it the same, maybe you can figure out, well, hey, you know what? This is a trigger, right? When you say that, it kind of triggers me. So take a step back and just be straight up. I believe that with any relationship. If you got something to say, say it to them, and have that conversation. Don't be afraid of talking about things. That's just so key in life. But sometimes you have to know yourself. It's time to say goodbye to certain friends, especially as we get older, right? As we get older, we start to see the world through our eyes. And just like that creates changes maybe in our relationship with our parents and our siblings, that also, takes, in any relationship. And sometimes we're going to say, you know what, this friendship, it's not worth it anymore. I'm sitting over here and they're sitting over there. So I don't know if that gives some guidance, but I can't help you stop punching your face. Although I'm sure there's a dad joke about punching your face, right? Yeah. So it's like the guy, I'll give you the dad joke. And by the way, I'm sorry, Mr. or Miss last Homerus. I'm going to assume that you're some type of joke of some sort. I'm not quite sure what to say there. But yeah, here's your dad joke. So the dad joke is a guy goes to the hospital and he's got burns on both sides of his face. And the doctor says, "What happened to your face?" So the guy goes, "Well, I was ironing and the phone rang and I picked up the phone and, it was the iron and it burnt, side of my face." So the doctor says, "Well, that's okay. That makes sense. But what happened to the other side?" So he says, "Well, he called back." That's my dad joke. My timing's never all that great. All right, so let's see what we got here. Should I get a vasectomy? That's a very personal question. So I wouldn't, you know, the one thing to think about from a vasectomy perspective is, that it's pretty permanent. You know, there are ways to maybe reverse it, but I think frankly, if you're asking the question in which it actually almost seems like a sincere question. So, I'm going to go with the assumption that it is, that's if you're, give it some real thought, especially if you don't have kids. So here's what I would say is this. If you're a person that doesn't have kids, I would say probably not, until you get older, right? When you're getting to the, maybe close to 40, you could kind of say, you know what, at this point I'm done. And that goes back to what I was talking about before, where our perspective changes, right? And I remember there was a time, even when I was dating, that I wouldn't date women of a certain age because I already had kids and I didn't want more kids. And women would say, well, I don't want kids. But in my experience, they kept kind of coming back a little bit later and saying, well, actually, you know what? Now that I found the right guy, I do want kids. Or now that I'm getting a little bit older, I do want kids. So I think, specifically with that, kids are a very personal choice. Number one, I would tell you is that don't just have kids because society tells you to have kids, which in society can be your parents, it can be, right, whatever. But have kids because you want to have kids. I think that's very important in that decision. Yeah, so some perspective there. Some kids are picking at me in school. Should I tell someone? Absolutely, you should tell someone. Absolutely. It's, at the end of the day, adults are there to help. And I hope that you have adults in your life that care. And 99% of the people in the world are good people. I used to get picked on in school. In fact, that was, a big issue for me in 8th grade. I got beat up quite a bit. The only thing I'll share with you is I learned two things along the way with bullies. One is if you call them out, sometimes it stops things, right? You just say, why are you doing this to me? And it makes them kind of face themselves a little bit as opposed to just, it changes the conversation. So that's one thing I noticed. But absolutely, tell an adult in your life, and and honestly, if that's a real issue, I guess you could even DM me and we can talk about how to approach an adult about that. So, how did you know she's the one? Love's a hard topic to talk to, right? In fact, I'm divorced. So, at the time she was the one, but it didn't turn out that she was the one, was she? So, I think an important thing to realize is that there is no one. This is my belief. I think Disney kind of screws up relationships for all of us. I think all the love songs screw it up. So it's societal. There's this societal belief that there's only that there's one person for us. But the reality is that we're not one person in our life. We change through our life. Every 10 years almost, I would say you're going to be a different person than you are, right? And so is the person that you're going to be in a relationship with. Every 10 years, they're going to be a slightly different person or maybe a fundamentally different person. I think that, and so what'll happen is you have the one right now, right? She's the one for me right now. That works, right? But there needs to be a realization that, first of all, there needs to be an understanding of lust versus love, and also and a realization that relationships take work. So, I would say I'd ask the question maybe a little differently, which is, what are the important things to look for, in a spouse or in a partner, and I think the things I would say are key are, number one is, are they able to give, right? So I'm going to assume you're able to give, but are they able to give? And are they willing to give? And they're willing to give to you. The reason that's important is that at the end of the day, if the person can't give to you, and the chances are you're not going to want to give to them. And once there's no giving going back and forth, it kind of breaks down love. The other thing is, are they honest? Will they be honest with you? and because trust is key in a relationship. And if they're not honest with the world, chances are they're not going to be honest with you either. So I would say those are probably the two key things that, I would look for. And then, you know, I mean, in relationship, I mean, there's so much, to talk to there. All right, let's see what else I got here. Do I have advice for you at 27 starting school to start a career late? So my background was technology and HR and stuff like that. I think it depends. If you want it going to Bloom, if you want to give me a little bit more information on kind of what career you're doing, I think the challenge is going to be one of time, right? In terms of school and job, that's pretty tough. But I think the key thing with school, and this is any advice that I give you guys, is going to be it needs to be practical. So much of school, you do all this work, and then it's not necessarily practical to really helping you succeed. So the core question is, what do you enjoy doing? And then, how do you enable yourself to make a living doing that? All right. How do I deal with challenging in-laws, specifically a sister-in-law? Yeah, and I had that, going on a little bit. I mean, and you read about it. I mean, look, I think any challenging relationship, it depends what the challenge is. So, right. So I think more information there, Gonza's tongue would be helpful to give some thought. Hey, thanks guys. I appreciate it. Also, I guess I should thank, thank you guys for these nice, nice gifts here. That's kind of cool. I'm glad this is kind of going well. I've done some awareness things and there hasn't been much interest in that. So, I like to give. That's, it comes from a place of ego, I think. But I do think that, it makes me feel alive in a way. So I'm going to thank you guys for listening in. I appreciate it. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I think we're all standing with the peaceful protesters. Personally, I understand violence. I don't like it, as my personal perspective. But usually violence isn't coming from the heart, right? Peace comes from the heart. Violence comes from anger, from misunderstanding, which makes sense, right? I understand it. That's right. I understand the violence, but it's sad to me to see it, and I'm hopeful that I'm hopeful for change, right? These aren't new issues. They aren't right. They're not, these are old issues, and change is gradual. I do think if we look back, I'm hopeful for society. I'm hopeful for, overall things are getting better. I mean, you look now, it doesn't seem that way, but don't look at you can't, and that's an important thing in life. Let's go back to some generic advice, is you got to look broadly at things in life, right? So if you look at what's going on right now in the world, it's really a screwy world, right? But if you look at like the building of where we're coming from, we've really succeeded as a society. So don't lose sight of the bigger picture, and focus on the overall, success in the world, and that might help your heart a little. What's your saying on a rebound relationship? 6 years of relations. I get read this. So we got, what's your saying on rebound relationships? 6 years of relationship ended, and she's now in another relation. Look, the thing about relationships, and I've seen this myself, is that, people, even if they've been in a relationship for 6 years, the other, she might have checked out after 3 years, right? So usually from a rebound relationship, I always look at it from myself, right? So I can't worry about what other people do in this world. You can't either, right? You have no control over other people. All you have control of is yourself and your reactions. So the thing that you need to think about from a rebound perspective is, what can I learn from that relationship, right? So focus on all the good that was in that relationship, and then take all that good and bring it with you to your next relationship. And then also look and ask yourself, well, what didn't work about that relationship? And what can I, what did I do wrong? Like, look at your own fault in the relationship. What did I do that I could do better this next time around? Because there's always stuff we can do better. And that's how your next relationship will be better than your last one. Will it be perfect? Probably not. But the more work you put into it, the better it'll be. Okay. I have social anxiety. I'm worried about getting a job. Do you have any advice for me? So I get social anxiety. I have a little bit of social anxiety myself. Or I've had social anxiety myself. Probably changes. I'm definitely an introvert. And I'm the guy that, but I'm a sales guy too. So it's kind of a weird mix. So I think social anxiety is, to me is different than worried about getting a job, unless you're worried about the social aspects of getting a job. I would say that anxiety is one of those things, especially social anxiety, is really one of those things that there are really good techniques around. Look into cognitive-based therapy, and that's one thing that I would kind of throw out there. And then, and the other piece about social anxiety that I throw out there is remember that everybody's socially anxious. There's no one who's not. In fact, if you really think about it, we're all a bunch of monkeys, right? And we're trying to figure out where are we in the hierarchy of the monkeys. That's what we're all doing. So the difference is some people, maybe they don't, there's a lot of differences, but but I do think it's important, to realize it's not just you, right? That everyone's socially anxious to some extent. And maybe they can put on a bravado some sort that's like, oh, I'm not anxious at all. But you put anybody in a new situation where they don't know anybody, let's say 99% of the people, and they're going to be socially anxious, right? And then also asking yourself the question, what are you actually anxious about? Are you anxious about embarrassing yourself, which is typically, I think what a lot of people are anxious about. And then, and doing some work around that can be really helpful. Okay, so now we're going to go back to going to Bloom, who asked a question earlier about, I think, going back to school and at the age of 27. So he's saying, okay, so I was thinking robotics because I enjoyed electrician work, but wanted more. I'm a shell right now and don't have enough science in high school, so I doubt myself like swimming, cooking, and welding, but these won't go anywhere. Yeah, you know what? I would say get some advice on that one. I don't have a good answer to that. And that's another piece of dad advice. Own the I don't know in life. We don't need to know everything. We really don't. And we can't know everything. So know when where your upper limit is, and that's when you get some advice. So I don't have any really good advice for you going to Bloom. I think it's a good question. I would say really, try to get some advice from robotics guys to figure out, what life looks like. And, I don't know that there are a lot of robotics jobs, is kind of where my concern would be there. So, I just kind of look out there and say, well, what's the degree I need? And, what's the career progression and career path? All right. That's great. Do I cash it? Yeah. Hello, how do I pay taxes? Do I cash out the president or does he take Venmo only? Send it to me and I'll forward it on for you. I sometimes smoke to help with anxiety and depression. As long as I'm not hurting people and being safe, is it okay? I mean, look, I can only tell you that smoking, from my understanding, talking to my dad who's a doctor, there's no such thing as safe smoking. Maybe a couple things, you could try. First of all, if you want help with anxiety and depression, I mean, really get some help with anxiety and depression. That's the first advice. Go to a therapist. Specifically, I like cognitive-based therapy. I think that's helped me the most in life. I will tell you there's a lot of different types of, therapists, and what works for me may not work for you. And that's why there's so many therapists. I think it's because they're different, people that learn and work differently in the world. Um, so, look, at the end of the day, smoking, there's so many ways, and anxiety and depression, I think, are two very different things. But definitely get some help, right? Life doesn't have to be hard, right? There are ways out of our head that can make life enjoyable and fun. And it takes work to get there, but it's better than the alternative. And frankly, most people in this world are asleep, right? That's something that I found to be true. And be one of the awoke people in the world, and really live in the world. And that's something you can accomplish, through getting yourself some help and then learning more. But I will tell you that my dad, who's a doctor, told me that there's really no safe amount of smoking. One thing that maybe you could look into is something where you're not ingesting any actual smoke. I don't know if that would be safer, like a hookah or something like that. But frankly, we'll go back to, I don't know if that's less hurtful on the lungs than a cigarette or a vape pen. You're suddenly a dad of 6, 3 boys and 3 girls. What do you do? 3 boys and 3 girls. Let me see how much time I have left. All right, cool. So this hypothetical question. Yeah. You got to figure out how to pay for 3 boys and 3 girls. That's the first question, right? That's dad's all about being responsible, right? Responsibility means meeting the emotional needs of your kids. Means meeting the physical needs of your kids. So, I don't know. I think it's for. I don't quite know how to approach that question. So I'll continue. Thank you. Any advice for a girl trying to be independent and living her life in a misogynistic society? Misogynistic society? Is that the word? I don't know. Is a guy that I should speak to misogynistic society. I would say that how would I say this? And take this from a grain of salt as a perspective from a guy. I don't, how do I say this? So I don't know that I guess I don't know that I agree with the premise. Now, it's true. Women don't make as much as men on average. It's true that, there are some men that are misogynistic. But I don't know that I would say that society as a whole is truly misogynistic, because at the end of the day, it's all about individuals. And so I think that, there are plenty of individuals that, frankly, aren't misogynistic at all. But what would I tell my daughter, right, if she came to me with that question? What would I tell my daughter? I tell her she's better than the world. I mean, that's really what I would tell her. I tell her she's better than the world. And I hope you know that about yourself, is that at the end of the day, well, actually, let me talk to a couple things here. You're trying to be independent. I think we're all trying to be independent. I think that's the American ideal, is be independent. So I want to take a minute to talk about that, and then we'll come back to misogynistic maybe. I want us to all understand that none of us are independent, right? And the American ideal is independence, but that's an American ideal, I think. I think if you go to a lot of countries in the world, it's all about community. And I want everyone to understand that independence is a lonely place to be, and it's a false truth, because at the end of the day, we're all reliant on other people. So, and I'm just going to give a basic idea here, right? I'm on a phone, which was developed by, let's go from the hardware perspective, right? There's a hardware company that creates this, right? And this is kind of a broad. Let's use a more simple example, right? Is my glass here of lemon water, right? So this was created. Someone blew the glass. Someone collected the sand. Someone created the gas. Pulled the gas out of the ground for the furnace. Somebody laid the pipe. Now, and then the person that laid the pipe, they ate food, right? So we're all interconnected. We're all a bunch of ants, right? Look at it that way. And realize that, and don't get me wrong, I think we want to be our own person, and we have to be our own person, because there's no one else we can be but us. But I do think that it's always key to remember that, even in our own independence, we're all relying on other people. So once you're truly independent, because you can be truly independent, maybe in mind in a certain way. I think it's about really owning the world, and and I think then you see misogynists and you just laugh at them, right? I mean, that's what I do with a lot of things. I laugh at a lot of perspectives because I'm like, you guys are just missing the point, and it doesn't really impact me really, and I hope it won't impact you. Therapy's too expensive. Look for options, and I'm sorry to hear that. A lot of schools have some decent options for you, there's, in my experience, there's always someone who'll do a sliding scale therapy session. So that's what you want to look for, is just ask them, hey, do you have a sliding scale option? And I think most of the time, look, let's be honest, most people that go into therapy, they don't really go into it for the money. They go into it because they want to help people. And so most everybody will have that. And so if you call around, hopefully you can find somebody that can give you an option there with asking for that sliding scale. For those who have shit dads, what do we do? Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That would really suck. That would really suck to have a shit dad. So I can approach this from a lot of different angles. I'll take you at face value that he is a shit dad, first of all, right? Because there's another angle here. Sorry, I just had to go back here. Every time someone adds a comment, it kind of scrolls up, and I like to kind of think about what you're asking. For those who have shit dads, what do we do? So let's go with the assumption that it's truly a shit dad. So you have to detach. And first of all, I mean, obviously for someone like that, there's going to be a lot of healing you have to do, and a lot of understanding. And this is key, that so much of our life is based on messages we receive from our parents. So much of our self-esteem is from messages we heard from our parents. Because what do we know, right, as a kid, is that all there is our parents, really. So I think the first thing I would tell you to do, forgetting the dad, is look back at the messages you got from your dad and throw them away. Because if it's a shit dad, you probably got some shit messaging about who you are. And it's really interesting because, right, let's say one person has a shit dad, one person has a good dad, they hear different messaging and they become different people. So if you can uproot those thoughts of whatever your shit dad would say to you from your own psyche, and again, it's probably going to be, introspection, therapy, journaling, working, getting those things out, you'll be a better person and a happier person. And again, assuming he's truly a shit dad, you have to separate from them, and not allow them to be a continued influence in your life. Having said that, I think there are a lot of people that think they have shit dads that actually don't. And so I think you have to be careful about that. Not agreeing, right, with your dad doesn't mean he's a shit dad. A shit dad to me, I'll be very specific, and things, abuse is a shit dad. Most other things, and that can be verbal abuse, it can be physical abuse, whatever kind of abuse. That's a shit dad. Most other things, to some extent, is seeing your dad as a person can really help. And that's something which you get to, especially as your parents age, you do more and more. But seeing them as a person with faults, sometimes that can help you maybe appreciate them in a way that you might not already. So there you go. Hopefully that's useful. Advice to Trump. Trump's a hurt man. You can't give a hurt man advice. Who's so into his ego. And it's this scary narcissistic kind of thing. Personally, I feel sorry for the guy. Because, I feel sorry for people that are hurtful, because in my experience, it means they've been hurt in such a fundamental way that they can't experience the world. It's just a way that they lash out. So look, I wouldn't give, so my advice to Trump would be to find a good therapist and work on, whatever those inner demons are. Because there's some inner demons. And maybe he'd get to enjoy, I don't know, he's in his 70s, so he doesn't have that much longer to live. So maybe he'd get to enjoy, his last years in a more woke space. Well, thank you, Caped Croissant. I appreciate that. That's very kind. Advice to the BLM protesters. I think we talked about that a little bit. How to grow up from a boy to a man. Let me just see, which I think I'm running out of time here. But thanks you all for joining me. So I'll just try to keep that in mind. Let's talk for the last few minutes about growing up from a boy to a man, and then maybe we'll do this again sometime, since it seems that people did enjoy it. I was about 40 before I felt like a man. 37, 38. And part of that is, you asked the question of how to grow up to be, how. I mean, the how is to take responsibility for yourself, to understand that everything in your world starts internally with your own worldview. Those are the first, kind of things that I would throw out there. Learning how to communicate well, learning how to ask for what you want, learning how to live in your world on your terms. And it's a slow process. It's a very slow process. So, yeah, I don't know if that's truly answering it, but we can go with that. I guess another minute. Let's see what else we got here. My parents don't like my boyfriend. What should I do? I love him very much, but I'm not necessarily pleased with the person he is. Look, you have to own your own life. You have to be you. You have to follow your path. Listen to what they say. Find out if, do they have good reasons, right? Typically they want what's best from you. Not always, right? Sometimes they have their own biases there. So I would just say that listen and then make your own decision, but really listen. If they have a perspective that, don't just necessarily throw it, because there are few people typically in your corner like your parents. Few people in the world that'll ever be in your corner like your parents. So appreciate that. And well, it looks like I'm out of time. I'll do this again sometime, so please join me then. And thank you all. And I hope you all have love in your life and find success in your life and peace in your life. So cheers. Be well.